My former partner and my ex-fiancée are finally together eternally. They're currently suspended in massive jars of formaldehyde. My partner has had his vocal cords severed and his limbs amputated, transformed into a living, thinking specimen. My ex. I stripped away her pain-inhibiting nerves. Now even a gentle breeze against her skin feels like 1,000 razor cuts. Staring into those four desperate eyes behind the glass, I pulled off my janitor's cap, revealing a face mapped with jagged scars. Good evening, Gavin. I've been sharpening the scalpel for 5 years. How's the pressure? Satisfactory. Outside, a torrential downpour hammered the city, washing the grime into the sewers. I dragged my crippled right leg toward the rear entrance of Mercy General Hospital. Rainwater dripped from my cheap yellow poncho, mixing with a permanent stench clinging to me, a fermented cocktail of garbage, cheap bleach, and dead rats. Hiring a janitor. The facility's manager, a bald, obese man named Big Ed, was kicked back with his feet on the desk, watching a cam girl on his phone. He lifted his heavy eyelids, looking at me the way one looks at a fly crawling out of a latrine. You mute. I nodded, my cloudy eyes fixed on the dusty concrete floor. To assume this identity, I paid a black market butcher to shave off 1/3 of my jawbone and corrode my vocal cord with acid. I didn't just look 20 years older. I was repulsive. Name? I took a piece of chalk I'd prepared and scrawled a single name on the floor in crooked letters. Arthur. Even the name is depressing. Big Ed chuckled. Then, struck by a cruel idea, he kicked the galvanized bucket at his feet. It was filled with black mop water, cigarette butts, and a glob of thick phlegm floating on top. You want a Mercy General? This is the best hospital in Seattle. Even the toilet scrubbers need a bachelor's degree. He tapped his cigar ash into the bucket, a malicious grin spreading across his greasy face. But seeing as you're I'll be charitable. Drink this bucket and the job is yours. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Thunder rumbled dully outside. I stared at the bucket. I knew exactly what was in that slurry. Nicotine, carbon ash, and a blend of at least 3 periodontal bacteria from the fat man's mouth. The Lucas Cole of 5 years ago, the genius thoracic surgeon, would have sliced Big Ed's carotid artery with a scalpel, missing the lingual nerve just so he could watch his own blood spray the ceiling without being able to scream. But I was Arthur now, a dog trying to survive under the nose of his enemies. I bent down, the motion making my deformed spine look pathetic and comical. Yo, he's actually going to do it. A few movers gathered around, laughing as they raised their phones. I lifted the rust-scented bucket and, without hesitation, tilted my head back and drank. The sour rot, the bitter tobacco, the slimy texture of the phlegm sliding down my esophagus. I memorized the taste of this humiliation coldly. It was rich, far richer than the swill I consumed in prison. Every swallow was a wet stone, sharpening the rusted blade in my heart. Gulp, gulp. The bucket was empty. I set it down, wiped my mouth with my sleeve, and looked at Big Ed obediently, forcing a twisted, fawning smile. Big Ed paused, seemingly rattled by my utter lack of dignity, then shuddered with disgust. Jesus, what a good dog. Fina, report to Subbase 3. You handle the medical waste. Now get the hell out of here. You stink. Clutching a broken broom, I limped into the rain-lashed connecting corridor. They didn't know Subbase 3B3 was exactly where I needed to be. Thanks for the meal. I'll return that bacterial cocktail to you in a few days in a much more entertaining format. The banquet hall of Mercy General was ablaze with light, the crystal chandeliers refracting dizzying beams. Tonight was the gala celebrating Dr. Gavin Chase's National Medal of Medicine. As the lowest of the low, I shouldn't have been there, but a drunk had vomited on the red carpet, and I was summoned to clean it up. I knelt on a handmade Persian rug, scrubbing the bile. Around me, men in bespoke suits and women wearing Chanel No. 5 mingled. The perfume mixed with the sour vomit triggered a strange excitement in my nasal cavity. Dr. Chase, congratulations. Your paper has shaken the global medical community. The voice was too familiar. I didn't need to look up. Gavin Chase, my former partner, the current dean of Mercy General, the media's medical god. A pair of polished Italian leather shoes stopped in front of me. A speck of vomit stained the tip. "You're too kind." It was a team effort. Gavin's voice was smooth as a broadcaster's, practiced and polite. He had his arm around a woman in a fire-red evening gown, her exposed back blindingly white. Serena Vance, my ex-fiancée, the woman who on the day of my arrest gave the passcode to my lab to Gavin. I lowered my head, pulling my cap down, and used a vomit-soaked rag to wipe Gavin's shoe. My hand trembled, not from fear but from adrenaline. My fingers were 3 inches from his ankle. If I had a rusty nail, I could drive it into his Achilles tendon with surgical precision, ensuring he drags his leg like me for the rest of his life. I held back. "Not yet." "EW." Serena shrieked, pulling her foot back. "Where did this beggar come from?" "He reeks." She fanned the air as if she'd smelled lethal gas. Gavin looked down. His gaze lingered on my hunched back for a second. In that second, my heart nearly stopped. Did he recognize me? No. Impossible. I had made myself into a monster. "Where's security?" Gavin frowned. He held a half-full glass of red wine. With a flick of his wrist, the crimson liquid cascaded down, pouring directly onto my head. Cold, sticky. It ran down my hair into my collar like blood. "This janitor's back. Why does it look so much like that dead man?" Gavin chuckled softly, the sound low enough only for Serena to hear. "That waste who died in prison. Lucas Cole." Serena kicked my bucket aside with disgust. "Don't say that name. Bad luck. This dress is haute couture. If it gets the smell of poverty on it, it'll never wash out. Right? Right? My mistake." Gavin soothed her, then looked at me, his eyes turning to ice. "Clean it up. If you can't wipe it clean, lick it clean." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Doctors and nurses who usually posed as saints now looked at me like a circus freak. I didn't look up. I didn't resist. I silently picked up the rag and continued scrubbing. The wine mixed with vomit, becoming a dark stain in my hands. "Gavin, Serena, did you know tannic acid and red wine, when mixed with a specific mold, produce a toxin that causes chronic asphyxiation? I've memorized the taste of this wine." Mercy General didn't sleep. The ER was always a battlefield. Gavin and Serena didn't go home after the gala. They went to the city cemetery. There stood a tombstone engraved with my name, Lucas Cole. It was an empty grave they had erected, a show of benevolence to tell the world they had forgiven the medical malpractice murderer and even given him a proper burial. 2 bodyguards stood in the distance. The rain persisted. Gavin unzipped his dress pants and began to urinate on the headstone. "Partner, look at you. Even dead, you're a nuisance." The stream splashed against the black and white photo. That janitor today gave me a scare. That look in his eyes, so pathetic. Just like when you begged me not to touch your sister. Serena stood under a black umbrella, lighting a cigarette, her red lips cold in the smoke. "Enough. If the paparazzi snap this, your reputation is toast. Who cares? It's just dead people here." Gavin shook off, zipped up, and turned to grab Serena, his hands roaming over her gown. "Say, do you think that loser is watching us from hell, getting mad that we're getting off on his grave?" Serena laughed, pushing him slightly. "Pervert, but his research data was useful. Half of your God-hand title belongs to him. The other half belongs to you, my accomplice. If you hadn't swapped his medication, that patient wouldn't have died, and he wouldn't have gone to prison. Serena, you're more toxic than I am." Likewise. They laughed in the rain like 2 vipers mating. 50 yards away in the tree lane, a dark figure gripped a tree trunk. I watched it all. My fingernails dug deep into the bark, splitting my fingertips until blood ran down the rough wood. I felt no pain. I heard every word. So that was it. The malpractice incident. You really did swap the meds. I touched my uneven scarred face. Lucas Cole was dead, buried under that piss-stained tombstone. The thing living now was a revenant crawled back from hell. Since you love acting, love building a public persona, I will build you the grandest stage of all and let you rot piece by piece under the eyes of the world. The emergency room lobby was chaos. Cardiac arrest, defibrillator, no response. Where's the attending? Where's the chief resident? A young nurse was on the verge of tears. On the gurney lay a construction worker covered in cement dust, likely a fall victim. The monitor screamed a flatline tone. They in turn stood sweating profusely, paddles and shaking hands. It's not working. This is commotio cordis cardiac concussion. Need to open the chest, but I don't have authorization. Move. Let me sweep. I shoved my cleaning cart loaded with dirty water through the crowd, slamming into onlookers. You lunatic. Not now. I ignored him, feigning a slip and lunge toward the gurney. What are you doing, security? Amidst the confusion and cursing, my hands appeared to flail wildly at the worker's chest. In reality, my index and middle fingers aligned, striking the fourth intercostal space on his left side with absolute precision. It was a lost technique of acupressure combined with my obsession with anatomical structure. In that split second, my fingers drove in like steel needles, plucking the vagal ganglion and striking a specific node on the pericardium. An invisible shock wave transferred directly to the heart. Get off. A security guard grabbed my collar and threw me like trash. I hit the floor hard, grimacing in pain, curling into a ball and making guttural, inarticulate sounds. A beep, 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 beep. The flat line on the monitor jumped, then a strong, rhythmic curve. Silence fell over the room. He's alive. The nurse's eyes went wide. Sinus rhythm restored. Then in turn, he looked at his own hands, bewildered. What did I just do? It's a miracle. Thank you, doctor. Thank you. The worker's family knelt, weeping. The intern, though confused, straightened his spine, putting on a mask of false confidence. I'm just doing my job. It was critical, so I used a specialized chest compression technique. I crawled up in the corner, grabbed my broom, and limped toward the bathroom. No one spared me a glance except one person. On the second-floor glass walkway, Gavin Chase held the coffee, staring darkly below. That janitor, what's his name? Dean Chase. That's the new hire for logistics. Goes by Arthur. He's mute. A bit simple in the head, his secretary replied, checking a file. Why? Gavin narrowed his eyes. The scene had been fast, but an expert of his caliber saw something. That wasn't just a clumsy fault. The angle the janitor fell, the moment his palm touched the patient's chest, was too precise. Precise. Is Lucas Cole dead? Excuse me. Yes, sir. Word from a prison was he died in a brawl 2 years ago. The body was cremated. You visited the grave yourself. Right. Dead, Gavin muttered. But the thorn in his mind remained. He was naturally paranoid. He'd kill 1,000 innocents to catch one threat. Is Arthur assigned to be 3 waste disposal? Gavin smiled cruelly. Didn't the P4 lab have a high-risk viral sample leak recently? We need someone to clean it up, the secretary said. Dean, that's highly corrosive acid gas. It hasn't vented fully. Sending someone in without a suit? He'll lose layers of skin, maybe die. It's for the safety of the hospital. Gavin sipped his coffee. Pay him double. If he walks out alive, he's just tough. If he doesn't, he's just a janitor. At the end of the B3 corridor stood a heavy metal door. A red biohazard skull warned P4 lab by a safety level 4. I stood there with a rag and a plastic bucket. Arthur, the dean is giving you a chance. Molly Higgins, the head nurse with eyes like a viper, held a handkerchief over her nose, standing well behind the safety line. A flask broke inside. Mop up the liquid. Don't come out until it's dry. Through the thick glass, I saw the faint yellow-green mist. It wasn't a virus. It was a volatile, high-concentration acid mixture. Gavin was in the control room, watching me through the cameras. I knew what he was looking for. If I were a normal person, I'd refuse, run, or choke immediately. If I were Lucas, I'd find a neutralizer or use the lab equipment. But I had to be Arthur, a greedy, stupid, worthless mute. I made a money sign to Molly and grinned like an idiot. Here, just get in there. Molly threw a few hundred bills on the floor. I picked them up like a dog, stuffed them in my shirt, and pushed open the door to hell. The moment the seal broke, suffocation hit me. Hiss! The exposed skin on my arm screamed as the acid gas reacted with moisture. My throat felt like I'd swallowed razor blades. Every breath was torture. The red light of the surveillance camera stared like a bloody eye. I couldn't cover my nose. That was too smart. I had to act a fool. I knelt, taking the useless rag, and began wiping the bubbling liquid sizzle. The moment my fingers touched the pool, I smelled my own flesh burning. Pain. Bone-drilling pain. My fingertips blackened and ulcerated, revealing red meat, then glimpses of white bone. I mentally recited the pain suppression chapter of the Pharmacopoeia of Poisons, trying to block the physical collapse with sheer will. It was impossible. The pain was too real. But I couldn't stop. I looked up at the camera, contorting my face in agony and confusion, opening my mouth like a fish out of water, drooling and crying silently. Is this what you want to see, Gavin? In the control room, Serena frowned, putting down her coffee. Disgusting. Looks like he really is a mess. If it were Lucas, he'd have hacked the ventilation system by now. Gavin stared at the bloody, ruined hands on the screen, his suspicion finally fading. He sneered. True, Lucas had OCD. Those hands were his life. He'd never let them become that. Guess I overthought it. Let him out. Don't let him die in there. The paperwork is a hassle. The airlock hissed open. I crawled out like a pile of sludge. My hand were charred claws. I held them up to Molly, wailing miserably. All right. Quit screaming. Molly kicked me. Go to the infirmary and get some burn cream. Useless trash. I curled up in a corner of the hallway, watching them leave. I looked down at my hands. Ruined, but worth it. Gavin, your only guard is down. I traded these hands for your complacency. Now it's my turn. The sewers at night are the city's intestines. Deep in the utility tunnels, I had a 2-square-meter home. Dark, damp, shared only with rats. Under a weak flashlight beam, I treated my hands. The infirmary's burn cream was garbage. I pulled out small jars scavenged from trash. Empty insulin vials now filled with a green paste. Ingredients: lard stolen from the cafeteria, herbal roots from the landscaping, and antibiotic powder from the expired medicine disposal. I bit the cork off and smeared the paste on the bone-deep wounds. Agony spiked again. I convulsed, soaking the newspapers beneath me with cold sweat, but I made no sound. I bit down on a block of wood, staring at a rusty pipe overhead. This paste, bone rot, flesh regeneration mud, was a recipe from an old Chinese poison master I met in prison. It accelerated necrotic tissue shedding. 10 times the pain, 10 times the healing speed. Exhausted, I leaned back. Next to me was a clipping from a hospital newsletter. Nurse Molly Higgins, wearing a rosette, accepting the Caregiver of the Year award. Her smile was radiant as she thumbed through a stack of bonus cash. I remembered clearly. 3 years ago, in a blizzard, my mother knelt at the hospital entrance, begging for a few days' grace on medical bills. What did Molly say? No money? Then go home and die. Don't die at the door. It's bad luck. She had security throw my mother into the snow like garbage. That night, my mother froze to death. I reached out with a bandaged hand and drew a red X over the photo. Molly, I raised a name. Your karma has arrived. Over the next 2 weeks, I became invisible. My hands miraculously scabbed over, leaving horrific scars that fit my monster persona perfectly. I observed Molly. Being a janitor meant access everywhere. Unseen, I noticed a habit. Molly was greedy and distrusted digital banking. She took cash kickbacks and, when counting bills, licked her thumb. That was her fatal flaw. One afternoon, Molly was berating a young nurse for forgetting her breakfast. Stop crying. I'm docking your bonus, she spat. And get that mute in here to mop. I entered with a bucket. Molly sat at her desk with a thick envelope, a bribe from a farmer rep. She tore it open, pulling out a stack of pink bills. She spat on her thumb and began counting. 100, 200, a mop near her desk. No one knew that into the carpet fibers I was dusting an invisible powder. It was a sporide cultivated in the damp basement. Osteopage, a bone-eating fungus mutated with a sugary culture and high-concentration calcium leaching agent. The spores were light, floating on the air current on my mop, landing on the bills. Once mixed with the enzymes and saliva, the fungus activates instantly. Molly counted happily. 5,000. Good haul this week. She greedily inhaled the scent of ink. I counted down in my head. The seed was planted. 3 days later, Molly's fingers itched. Damn it. Did that mute bring fleas in here? She scratched her right thumb and index finger. The tips were red like chill blades. Her prize hand was gone, fired for traumatizing the VIP. She lost her pension. Rumor had it she went mad in isolation, banging her head against the wall, screaming, "There's a ghost. A ghost is hurting me. Yes, there's a ghost. You change your trash bags." I wasn't satisfied. This was just the appetizer. I looked to the upper floors. Vice Dean Warren Quaid's office. The obese Letcher was currently puffing a cigar, eyeing a new intern. Warren Quaid. While in prison, my sister Lily approached him for help with my appeal. He tried to rape her in his office. Lily jumped from his second floor to escape. She survived, but shattered her legs. Now, she sits in a wheelchair in a remote sanatorium. Every time I think of her empty eyes, my blood turns to magma. Warren, since you can't control your lower half, I'll control it for you. Warren burned expensive agarwood incense. He claimed it was for meditation. Really, it masked the smell of sex. As the janitor, I emptied his ashtray twice a day. Arthur closed the blinds. Warren loosened his tie, leering at a female farmer rep. I obeyed, plunging the room into ambiguous twilight. As I passed the incense burner, I flicked my finger. A black pellet the size of a grain of rice fell into the ash. Extracted from Dicura stramonium and mixed with African blister beetle concentrate. It doesn't strike immediately. It accumulates, degrading the prefrontal cortex, the center of reason and shame. Once triggered by a specific sound frequency, the drug floods the system, turning man into a beast of pure instinct. I had already recorded that frequency into the hum of his office air conditioner. I needed a bigger stage. Next Monday, the Medical Ethics Summit would broadcast live with the City Health Commissioner attending. Warren would host his moment of glory and his final moment as a human being. Monday arrived. The auditorium was packed. Cameras lined the back. I hid in the shadows backstage with my broom. Warren sat center stage, hair slicked back, face flushed. His eyes were muddy, but he looked functional. Ahem, distinguished guests and colleagues. Warren spoke into the mic, voice booming. Today we gathered to discuss ethics. I counted the seconds. The air conditioning had been running for 30 minutes. The subsonic hum hammered his central nervous system. Time. Sweat beaded on Warren's forehead. He felt hot, not from a room, but from his gut. His vision swam. The doctors in the audience began to warp, their faces morphing into the strippers he frequented. The health commissioner, a balding, serious man next to him, suddenly looked like a ravishing beauty. "Dean Quaid, you okay?" the commissioner asked. That question was a spark in the powder keg. Warren shot to his feet. Hot, so hot. He ripped off his tie. The crowd gasped. "Dean Quaid, what is he doing?" Warren moved faster, tearing his shirt open, buttons pinging off the table. "Quit acting. Take it all off." Warren roared into the mic, his voice blasting through the hospital and the live stream. Then, in front of millions, the esteemed Vice Dean dropped his pants. Screams pierced the air. Security, cut the feed, grab him. Gavin Chase, sitting in the front row, turned purple, screaming orders. Too late. Warren was gone. Like a boar in heat, he lunged at the health commissioner. "Hey, beautiful. Give Daddy a smile." He tackled the man naked, dry humping his leg while spewing vile filth. "How much is that impotent Gavin paying you?" "I'll pay double. I want the intern with long legs." The commissioner turned green, kicking him. "Get off. You're insane." Warren bit the man's leg. "Don't run, baby." The chat in the live stream exploded. User 123. WTF? Is this real? Doc Watcher. Mercy General Vice Dean goes feral. Ethics bot. This is medical ethics. Gossip Girl. Did he call the dean impotent? Security guards rushed the stage. But Warren, fueled by the drug, possessed hysterical strength, tossing two guards aside. I watched from the curtains. This is your true face. Strip away the suit and you're worse than an animal. Warren's face turned liver purple, veins bulging. The side effect of the overdose hit. Blood pressure spiked to critical levels. Yes. Warren froze. His eyes bulged, whites filling with blood. A fountain of red sprayed from his mouth onto the commissioner's face. He stiffened and fell backward. Thought massive cerebral hemorrhage. Dead on arrival, but on his face a grotesque, lewd smile remained frozen. Warren's death plunged Mercy General into a PR nightmare. Gavin smashed his office. Investigate. Was he on drugs? Poison? The autopsy showed nothing, just a ruptured aneurysm. The behavior was ruled a psychotic break or advanced neurosyphilis. My compound metabolized into simple amino acids within 30 minutes of death. Even the best coroner would find nothing. That is the way of the poison doctor. Whispers filled the hallways. I didn't know Quaid was into that karma. Fear began to spread. Next target, Tiffany, the intern who sold her body for a residency spot and helped frame others. She was now an influencer, the most beautiful angel in white. Tiffany had survived the purge of Warren's cronies because she was popular online. She was live streaming in a locker room. Hey guys, recommending this hydration mist, hospital exclusive. She pouted at her phone. I was emptying the trash. The mist bottle, I'd spiked it last night. Microspores of a deep-sea parasitic organism that thrives on collagen. Arthur, give me a milk tea. Half sugar now, or I'll have Gavin fire you. I took the money. Tiffany sneered at the camera. Look at our freak janitor, guys. Like Quasimodo, scary. Shall I look fine? Nurse, kinda you to employ him. I felt nothing. Laugh. Soon your face will be more interesting than mine. I returned with the tea. Tiffany sprayed her face again. So refreshing. Then she frowned. Huh? A pimple? She zoomed in. A red dot on her cheek rapidly swelled into a cherry-sized boil. It itches. She scratched. Huh? The boil burst. No blood. A white thread-like thing poked out. A blackhead. She pulled it. It wasn't a thread. It was a worm. As she pulled, the eggs under her skin hatched in unison. Hundreds of white filaments erupted through her prized face. Her smooth skin became a honeycomb. As the millions watching saw the transformation live. Beauty to monster in seconds. Viewer 0001. NSFW. Shocked. I'm going to puke. Biohazard trigger warning mod. Content warning. Parasites. Tiffany clawed at her face, grabbing a brow razor to scrape them off, flaying her own skin. Nurses rushed in, vomiting at the sight. I listened to the screams. You judge by appearance, Tiffany. Now your nightmare. This is just the beginning. It can't be a coincidence, Gavin growled, slamming a scalpel into his mahogany desk. Molly warned. Tiffany, someone is hunting us. But Lucas is dead. Serena shrieked. We saw the ashes. Ashes can be faked. Gavin turned, eyes wolf-like. Investigate everyone, even the janitor. I was in the B3 closet sharpening a ceramic blade. I heard the commotion. Finally realized it. Partner, too late. The next day, Gavin's mother-in-law, Mrs. Vance, was due to demand money. Target 3, I walked the corridor. The atmosphere was suffocating. People walked against walls. Check everyone. DNA, fingerprints, Gavin shouted in his office. The police said it was accidental. Serena argued. Accidents. Gavin smashed an ashtray. It's a targeted kill list. What about the janitor? Arthur, my heart rate didn't change. Checked him. Serena dismissed. No record. Acid burns. Lucas had OCD. You wouldn't clean toilets. Gavin walked to the window, staring at me, wiping the glass. I hunched lower, frantically scrubbing a spot, drooling slightly. True. Gavin turned away. Then it's someone else. Maybe Zachary, the finance director. The screening began. DNA tests for everyone. A dead infamy. My DNA hadn't changed. Next, Arthur. The young tech looked tired. I lower my mask. She flinched. Open. I coughed violently, pulling out a bloody handkerchief containing sputum from a TB patient I'd scavenged. I slipped a trace under my tongue. Ah, she swabbed. Gross. Go. The result would show active, highly contagious tuberculosis. The hospital wouldn't DNA sequence a biohazard. They'd isolate or fire me, but I needed chaos. That night, I hacked the lab server. I swapped my sample ID with Zachary, the finance director. The next morning, Gavin threw a file at Zachary. Drug residue in your drawer, an offshore account. And last night, you were in the server room. It's Viagra. My wife trades crypto. I was hiding cash. Zachary wept. Traitor. Gavin pressed the intercom. Take him to B3 the old way. Gavin, you devil. Zachary screamed as he was dragged off. I listened from a hall. I had planted the drugs. I had spoofed the transfer. I had worn a fat suit and wigged to the server room. Gavin just cut off his own arm. With Zachary gone, the finances were a mess. Mrs. Vance, a greedy shrew, arrived in the lobby screaming, "Where's my daughter? I need money." "Mom, stop," Serena hissed, emerging. "I just sent you $50K, chump change. I want the villa Lucas promised me." I swept dust toward her shoes. Greed is the best bait. Mrs. Vance got a check for $1 million to shut her up. She went straight to Golden Summit Wealth, a firm promising 50% returns on Mercy General Internal Investments. The manager was the Fox, my command friend. "Internal only, ma'am. Minimum buy-in is $5 million. "5. Mrs. Vance panicked. Greed took over. She mortgaged Serena's properties and Gavin's hidden shops. She scraped together $8 million. A week later, Golden Summit vanished. Mrs. Vance woke up to loan sharks painting her door. She ran to the hospital. "Save me. Pay my debts." Gavin, already stressed, snapped. "Throw her out." She mortgaged my shops. Security tossed her into the rain. She sat in the mud, wailing. I approached with a black umbrella. "Get away, freak," she spat. I pulled out a paper, a photocopy of the confession she forced me to sign 5 years ago. She froze. "Yep." I lit the paper with a lighter as it burned her mouth slowly. "No, no one will bury you." She recognized the eyes. Terror and high blood pressure collided. Her face slumped. "Stroke." She collapsed in her own filth, staring at me, unable to speak. A different kind of silence. The internal purge intensified. Gavin hired Viper, a cleaner/detective. "This place smells of a hunter." Viper sniffed in B3. He cornered me. "You the mute." He held a butterfly knife to my throat. "Your burns are real, but your eyes are too quiet." I dropped to my knees, frantically kowtowing, offering my pocket change, shivering with cowardly fear. Viper laughed and kicked me. "Just a coward." He planted a bug on my broom. Anyway, I spent 3 days doing nothing but sweeping and sleeping. He got bored and moved on to the pharmacy director. Opportunity struck. Gavin ordered Viper to incinerate special waste. Failed test subjects. I was the operator. Viper supervised. "Hurry up." Viper smoked. I pushed the cart. As I passed him, I stumbled, slamming the cart into the gas valve. "Watch it." Viper reached out. I twisted unnaturally, throwing a handful of bone ash mixed with white phosphorus in his face. Arc. The phosphorus ignited on contact. Green fire ate his face. He slashed blindly. I hit the high draft button on the furnace. The suction pulled the off-balance, blinded hitman toward the inferno. He grabbed the rim, hands sizzling. I used a new broom handle to pry his fingers loose one by one. Curiosity killed the cat. He fell into the fire. Gavin assumed Viper took the money and ran. Now it was just the king and queen on a lonely island. Gavin decided to gamble everything on a Century surgery, a head transplant near Connection for a sheik. $1 billion live broadcast. It was my stolen theory, but he only had half of it. Surgery day. The world watched. Gavin scrubbed in, terrified of poison in his food. He didn't check the air filters. I had dripped Dream Oil, a hallucinogen derived from deep-sea jellyfish, into the air ventilation. It amplifies guilt and fear under high focus. 3 hours in the critical nerve stitching. Gavin stared through the microscope. The nerve turned into a red snake. He flinched. "What is it?" Serena asked. "Nothing." He looked again. The heart on the table had Lucas Cole's face. It mouth-twitched, "Wrong cut, partner." "I'm a genius," Gavin shouted suddenly. The room froze. "Gavin, the cameras." Serena hissed. The drug peaked. Gavin saw the room fill with the ghost of B3, the faceless janitor, the burning hitman, the naked vice dean. "Get back." Gavin swung his scalpel wildly at the air. Slash. He severed the patient's aorta. Blood sprayed the lens. The feed cut, but the world saw the medical god butcher a sheik like a madman. It wasn't an accident. It was an execution. The hospital was besieged. Creditors, angry mobs, and the Sheik's private army. Gavin and Serena cowered in the office. What do we do? Serena cried. Ghosts, Gavin mumbled. The power died. Darkness. Click-clack, click. Footsteps. The door lock melted. A beam of light cut the room. I stood there, no longer hunched, wearing a crisp black suit, the one Lucas wore 5 years ago. Gold-rimmed glasses. The face was still scarred, but the posture was unmistakable. Good evening, partner, I said. Serena. I spoke using ventriloquism, mimicking my old voice. Lucas, Serena exclaimed, knocking over a vase. Arthur's clocked out, I said, spinning a ceramic scalpel. Dr. Cole is on call. We've been operating for 5 years. Time to stitch. I have money. Swiss accounts, Gavin begged. I'll put a bounty on your head on the dark web, using your own money, I said coldly. I dragged them to the private elevator. Down to B3. The lab was empty. 2 large specimen jars awaited. Welcome to my world. Kill me, Gavin screamed. The building is rigged with C4. It blows in 30 minutes. But first, a procedure. I turned to Serena. You stripped me of everything. I'm stripping your pain inhibitors. I injected her. Now air hurts. I cut superficial lines on her skin. She screamed until her voice broke. Then, Gavin, you love transplants. I'm removing your conscience. Oh, wait. You don't have one. I severed his vocal cords. I needed his hands. Useless now. And his eyes open. I placed them in the life support jars. They wouldn't die in the explosion. The C4 would collapse the upper floors, sealing B3 like a tomb. They would survive in the dark, conscious, for 72 hours until rescue. I walked out. Daunt. Click. Boom. Mercy. The general collapsed into a mountain of rubble. 3 days later, the rain returned. I sat in a diner, eating soup, watching the news. Rescuers have breached Sub B3. The camera showed the horror. Bodies of missing homeless men, and then the 2 jars intact. Gavin, a torso floating in green fluid, eyes pinned open, staring at the cameras. Serena, pink and raw, convulsing in agony from the vibration of the rescuer's footsteps. The world gagged. They are alive. But the reporter couldn't finish. Gavin was alive to face the lawsuits, the Sheik's wrath, and the ghosts. Serena was in a prison hospital, suspended in water because sheets felt like sandpaper. Justice served cold. No, this was deep frozen. I finished my soup. I checked the news on my sister. She was safe, funded by the offshore accounts I diverted. I went to the sanatorium wall. I saw Lily in the window. She waved at the trees. She knew. Goodbye, Lily. I encountered a man in the bus station bathroom. A cleaner for the shadow organization backing the hospital. Arthur, he aimed a silenced pistol. You know too much. I straightened up. You know why Gavin lost? He talked too much. I triggered the mechanism in my mob handle. Pressurized gas, halophane, and neurotoxin. He fired wildly, shattering the mirror and clutching his eyes. I disarmed him and crushed his larynx. Tell your master's Mercy General was the opening act. I walked out into the sun. 3 years later, at the border of a war-torn state in the Middle East, a Red Cross tent. Doctor, the artery is severed. We have no equipment. A man in a black trench coat and a silver half-mask stepped in. Give him to me. Who are you? He didn't answer. He produced a roll of strange scalpels. Without magnification, his scarred hands moved like a blur. Blind stitching. 10 minutes later. Done. The child breathed. Are you a god? The nurse whispered. I washed my hands outside. I was the ghost now, or the god hand. I saved lives to wash away the blood of B3. A mercenary offered me a cigarette. You hear about that hospital in the U.S. 3 years ago? The dean was turned into a pickle. Brutal. Never heard of it, I said, lighting up. My satellite phone rang. Lily, happy birthday, big brother. Thanks. Serena died yesterday. A mosquito bit her. The amplified pain caused cardiac arrest. Poetic. Gavin is chewing his own tongue, but they won't let him die. When are you coming home? Soon. Just paying awesome debts here. Ghost incoming wounded. I pulled on my black gloves. The wind caught my coat. I am Lucas Cole. I am a poison doctor. I am the architect of the Mercy Hell. Is the story over? No. As long as demons hold scalpels, My hell waits for them. I walk toward the rising sun, my shadow stretching long across the sand. Story complete. Story complete.